This is the Backlog Battle Podcast, episode 195, Creativity Through Limitation. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Backlog Battle Podcast. This is Alex. Anthony is unfortunately not with us today once again, but today it's actually going to be a very special episode of the show. No, Daniel is not here, but I actually decided to actually interview Mike Kayin O'Reilly. Now, if you don't know who that guy is, he's the creator of I Wanna Be the Guy, and he's working on a brand new game. It's called Brave Earth Prologue, which, you know, if you really love Castlevania, like old school NES Castlevania, you'll really like what he's got to offer. Today, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of other stuff that's not necessarily related to, you know, like his games and stuff. Like a lot of interviews have basically talked about I Want to Be the Guy, you know, Brave Earth Prologue and stuff like that. You guys can obviously just check this out on YouTube or Steam or what have you. So today we actually wanted to talk about the other things that make him and fashion him as like kind of like a gamer, and a very unique gamer at that, who also happens to be designing video games. So so without any further ado, let's bring in Mike. So hey Mike, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
It's nice to just talk to you now for the first time.
Yeah, well, what Mike's actually referring to is we've actually been talking, honestly, for like about an hour and a half, but somehow that whole conversation went into the ether, all zeros now, but here we are. We're finally doing the interview for the first time once again. How are you doing?
For the first time, for the second time. Doing pretty good.
Great. So I wanted to kind of open up this conversation with something that I found out about when I started following you on Twitter, which is wrestling. I did not know you were such a big wrestling fan, dude.
I love wrestling. And it's funny because there's like a huge dead zone for me. Where it's like there's like Attitude Era to like probably like mid early 2000s, and then like 10 years just nothing.
Yeah,
because I think that's a period where a lot of people got sick of it, and like I didn't even look back at all for like 10 years.
It's weird you mentioned that too, because like that's like the era where like John Cena started becoming popular, and
yeah,
you know, when The Rock left, I kind of almost left the WWE as well, you know, so I kind of feel where you're coming from. So on Twitter, we actually started talking about like TLC, which is the last Raw pay-per-view, which I'll be honest, like when you started talking about the main event of TLC, I was just like, what? Like, really? Like, this is awesome. I have to interview this guy now, because not only did he make I Want to Be the Guy, but he's also a freaking wrestling fan. That is so cool.
It's so fun too. And it's like, I love that on Twitter, I can talk wrestling with people who aren't, I guess, wrestling fan first people, because like I'll go on like Squared Circle and stuff like that, and like sometimes just some of the opinions I read are just infuriating.
Yeah,
like there's just something about it where it's like a lot of times people who are like the super fan, wrestling fan, this is my primary hobby thing. No offense to those people, but like,
of course.
Like, I don't know, like when you come from like a situation where I'm mostly used to talking to like designers and stuff like that, or like whatever, it's like even like we all disagree on a lot of stuff still, but like there's like a level of discourse I'm used to, as opposed to like what I feels to me is like very casual discourse, which is fine, but it's like it frustrates me because sometimes I'm like, don't you guys know anything about storytelling? It's like you're just parroting something Cornette said on a podcast.
Right.
You don't even know why it's right or wrong.
Yeah, I'm not even a fan of Cornette, I'll be honest. Like
I go back and forth on him so much. Like right now he's on my shit list.
Oh, really?
Not my shit list, but like sometimes he'll say stuff where I'm like, you're kind of wrong because you're applying it to the wrong context, but you're definitely saying something that like has merit and was true at one point.
Right.
You know, but like he's just gotten so bad at applying it, and like it's just like,
yeah,
it's too much for me. But like, yeah, like there's a lot of like parodying stuff like that. But like on Twitter, it's like there's like one of the people I talk about it like is like one of the musicians from Steven Universe, and that's like our shared. Like, I don't know if he's even played I Want to Be the Guy.
Yeah.
Like, right? And I haven't watched Steven Universe, but it's just like, oh yeah, like, we're two creator dudes. We're going to talk about pro wrestling.
Exactly.
And it like, works out. Because it's just like, I don't know, it's like a different approach of, like, talking about things. And it makes it easier to... Right? Because it's not even about being right or wrong. It's about being on the same conversational wavelength.
Yes.
And I think, like, a lot of, like, being a creative type, it's just a different way of approaching things. Because it's definitely not wrong to approach things just as a fan, but it can be frustrating when you're used to doing it in other ways. Like,
exactly.
It's hard to go back into that mode.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned storytelling because I feel like the Backlog Battle podcast as a whole, actually, it's kind of like telling a story, right? Like there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end. So there's already that kind of formula going on. And so to me, like as somebody who is a content creator, I feel that it's really difficult for me to try to be a fan sometimes and, you know, and kind of like separate my critique side from my casual fan side. And I kind of sometimes do that in wrestling, even though I don't have any experience in wrestling. If, you know, like actual wrestling, I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense because it's like in wrestling, like there's a lot of cargo cultishness in wrestling. Like, even for the people who know about wrestling, like, even people who are wrestling and wrestlers and bookers, like, a lot of it's like, we do this because this is how we've always done it. And there's certain aspects of that get frustrating because it's like, when you're exposed to lots of different types of storytelling, it's kind of like, it's like, I don't know what would be right because I don't have the knowledge you guys have.
Right.
But, like, I know, like, dismissing a lot of this stuff is wrong because there's definitely, like, you know, there's so many ways to possibly evolve because every other medium evolves how it tells stories and has gotten way more sophisticated over time. I feel like people's capacities for enjoying sophisticated stories have like increased a lot. Like even if they don't get the sophistication, even like people are just like, it's not a turnoff to people, even if they don't totally follow, which is perfect because you want a situation where like people are enjoying things on different levels. Like it just feels more accessible to people.
Right.
Yeah. While like wrestling seems like afraid to add that like upper level.
It's kind of like they're trying to appeal to like a least common denominator kind of storytelling, you know, but you know, to me, the most interesting thing is like, I don't know if you know Max Landis.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, I rewatched his video about like the story arc of Triple H again. Like,
oh yeah, that's such a good video.
It is, and to me, like ever since I started watching that again, like, and kind of reacquainted myself with that video, like I started looking at every single wrestler as kind of like this huge story arc, right? And
yes,
and the one character that I started applying that to is Kevin Owens, because I you know, I don't know what you think about Kevin Owens.
I love Kevin Owens.
He's freaking awesome, and now Sammy is kind of getting into that ballpark as well. And you know, like for the longest time, I was telling people like, you know, like just wait until Sammy gets his spot. People are like, no, Sammy's gonna let go. He's not doing anything. And I'm like, telling them, guys, it's on purpose. Kevin and Sammy are a package deal. Something is gonna happen. And then of course, Hell in a Cell happened, you know, and now all we'd want to talk about is Sami Zayn all of a sudden, you know?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
So someone said, someone compared him to the black suit Spider-Man from and it's like I watched that Spider-Man movie recently, and the whole time we were all just like joking about like, God, Peter Parker's such a dick, it's amazing. Like in an entertaining way, like even though that's a bad movie, like
yes,
Peter Parker being a dick is great.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's 100% accurate.
That's Sami Zayn right there.
Yeah, no, Kevin Owens is why I'm glad I didn't become a wrestler.
Oh, I see.
Because like I'm a big husky dude who always would do stuff that was beyond my Like, you know, I'd be the big fat guy doing moonsaults and shit like that. It's like, oh god, though, I would have to be better than Kevin Owens. So
yeah, you got to push yourself
out, right?
hard.
Like,
yeah, yeah, that's kind of crazy. So I am kind of curious though, because we talked a bit about, you know, watching wrestling. Like how far back does wrestling actually go? Like as far as like your upbringing and your growing up is concerned, like how much of it is an influence on you?
Oh yeah, like a lot of people get in really early, and I was pretty late compared to most people.
Mm-hmm.
Like besides, like, you know, I knew who wrestlers were. I probably had some wrestling toys. I liked Hulk Hogan.
Nice.
I didn't even have any concept of like faces and heels or anything like that. Really,
I don't think as kids we had concept,
right?
Yeah,
right. Like, every wrestler was cool. Like, whatever. Like, they're all cool. They're all cool, nice guys. Because I watch Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So like everybody but the Iron Sheik's a cool dude,
right? Or on occasion Roddy Piper when he becomes a bad guy. Yeah.
You know, but in high school, like Attitude Era happened. Everybody in high school was talking about it, so it's just like through sheer like being left out of the conversation, I got into wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
But then the big thing that really sealed it was I was at like a party and somebody talked me into trying backyard wrestling, and it's like I don't even know why I particularly wanted to do it, because like thinking back now, it's like I wasn't like a super huge wrestling fan yet.
Mm-hmm.
But like I guess the idea of doing it sounded even more fun.
Wait a second. You doing it like not like as a audience member, but like actually doing wrestling, like moves and all that? Holy crap.
Yeah, I did for years. I did backyard wrestling.
What? Like, I'll be honest. Like, I mean, yes, I'm kind of feigning like ignorance here because we've talked about this in a previous recording. But like, I don't think I've ever read an interview with you where you actually mentioned about backyard wrestling ever.
Yeah. It's like I'll mention it on Twitter sometimes. Like occasionally I'll bring it up. But like, yeah, that was like a huge thing for me. Like, when I watch wrestling now, I get these feelings of sadness when I like see certain things that are cool, where it's like, I wish I was still wrestling. I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's like even like weird things like, so like here's like a backyard wrestling problem.
Okay.
Backyard wrestling problem is the ground's hard. It's harder than a ring.
Yes.
So you do like a lot of like lucha rolls and stuff like that. Like it's very similar to like AAA stuff,
mm-hmm.
where it's like not a lot of people do flat back bumps. I was a flat back bumper though,
mm-hmm.
so I'd be the one willing to like do moves for people. Nothing like super crazy, but it's like even doing stuff like, hey, I want to do a fisherman suplex.
Wow.
Like that for a backyard wrestler, that's a big bump because
mm-hmm.
it's hard. Like I would do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I made a problem. It's like my finisher was like was an STO.
Oh, okay.
But that's kind of a big bump, so
mm-hmm.
it usually look kind of crappy.
Yeah.
So like I'll look at moves now. It's like I wish I could go back and steal that. It's like the move I wish I could steal. It's like I wish I could do the bank statement.
Nice.
Because I'm taking the bump. I will take the bump.
Right.
Like it's that's fine. So then it'll look good. And then the fact it's like you do that and then you go into a submission.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's such a cool sequence. Like I would totally steal that. Or it's like it makes me sad that I don't get to. Like, or it wouldn't even matter now, because if I wrestled now, it would have to be in a ring. Like Weekend Warriors wasn't a thing back then.
Right. I mean, you could be the wrestler that also makes video games. I mean, that would be quite the shtick. You know?
But as I get older, I'm like too out of shape now. It's like the amount of effort and money to like to catch up and stuff. Like,
look, man, DDP did it at 38 years old. Okay,
that is true.
Yeah, and he even invented a yoga program around the fact that when he broke his back. So
yeah, no, there is still something I want to do, because I do have a friend who did wrestling, and his friends with people who are still active wrestlers. So I'm still waiting for the chance to do this. It's just like, okay, I just want to go. I want to run the ropes. I want to take a few bumps.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm out of bump shape.
Right.
And it's a funny thing, though, when, like, doing backyard wrestling, like, sometimes when wrestlers talk about stuff, like, even though I wasn't a worker,
mm-hmm.
Like, they'll talk about, like, oh, yeah, I wasn't in ring shape. It's like, I know what ring shape is. I know exactly what they mean, where it's like, when we were doing shows every week, like, I'd be taking bumps. It'd be great. I wouldn't feel anything the next day.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we would take time off in the winter, because, you know, it's outside, and we're in, like, in the Northeast, so it's like, snow and shit.
Right.
There'd just be a point where it's like, we just can't.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get back and we do like some simple matches. It'd just be like, oh my God, I'm so sore. Oh, it hurts.
Yeah.
And then after like a week or so of that, it'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like, I feel fine. Like, unless I took a bad bump, nothing would hurt. Like,
yeah. It's like, the way that I describe it to people, it's like calluses, but for bumps.
yeah, right. No, it really is. So it's like when they talk about stuff like that, it's like, I really relate to it. It's like certain things where it's like, I don't know how certain bumps feel, but then like I'll watch stuff like you ever saw like the DDT at the parks stuff?
Yeah.
Right? Or like I'll see them, or the video of like Kenny Omega before he joined DDT wrestling in like the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'll see those bumps and I'll cringe because I know how those bumps feel.
Yeah.
Like,
man, I mean, it's crazy because like I'm imagining you watching like a pay-per-view, like a Hell in a Cell, and just feeling every single bump like, as you're watching it.
It's hard because I don't know how a ring bump feel.
Okay.
It's like, I know they feel better than a ground bump.
I see.
Right? Because in like, even then I'll watch wrestlers and it's like, they don't do the same shit on the mats outside that they do on. And the mats are nicer than the ground.
Yes.
So, yeah, but yeah, like when I see them, like, because, like if you see somebody do a suplex on the mats, it like always looks a little crappier than when it's in the ring.
Yeah.
It's like, that's like what our suplexes look like. Probably not as good, obviously, but like, you kind of like, you don't want to lift them too high or anything like that. Right? Like, yeah,
because the bump will just be that much harder.
Right. And especially when you're not even getting paid.
Yeah.
Like, you're just doing fun. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not going to.
Yeah. Man.
Right, like we were never like, nobody ever did anything super stupid because again, like we knew like we're not getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not jumping off a high stuff, whatever. It's like I said, like I said, like we were talking about before, it was like Chikara.
Yeah,
there was a lot of comedy, and sometimes it was like serious wrestling where we were trying to actually wrestle, and occasionally we'd have like weapon stuff because weapon stuff works easily and it doesn't actually hurt. You can hit someone with a stop sign; it's fine. You put your hands up.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think we ever even got anybody concussed or anything, and this is before everybody. Right, and this is before anybody even knew concussions were like super serious.
Yeah,
right.
Now it's like everything, right?
Yeah, like we had like a few like sprained ankles, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were as safe as backyard wrestling could get while still like trying.
Yes, without actually, I don't know, burning.
Right, which means we were still all idiots, but
safer idiots.
Yeah,
that's great. I'll admit, like. The first time we talked about backyard wrestling, I was kind of imagining you on the cover of Acclaim's backyard wrestling game. You remember that?
Yes.
Because, like, for the people out there who are listening, Acclaim lost a license to the WWE, and for some reason they thought, like, hey, we have we could just do backyard wrestling, right? And use the same damn engine. It's kind of crazy.
I just find it funny where I'm like, oh man, it would have been so funny, but it never happened if I intersected with Zack Ryder.
Right?
Because it's the right age. We're both from Long Island.
Yeah.
But it never happened. That would have been so funny if it's like ended up like wrestling with Zack Ryder.
I mean, like I said, it's never too late. Just saying. Like a career change. But Mike, before we continue, I just want to kind of pause this and kind of talk about Amazon.com. You see, guys, every time you want to buy something from Amazon.com, whether it's books, movies, video games, or what have you and stuff, use our link, bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. That's all one word. Once again, that is bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. If you even want to check out audiobooks, that's fine too. Audible.com is part of Amazon.com, so use that link, bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. Maybe, just maybe, even search for Mike's backyard wrestling debut. Maybe somebody's recorded it and released it as a DVD for sale on Amazon. I wouldn't doubt it. And if you listen further, you'll probably be able to hear like what, Mike's wrestling name is, which I'm kind of excited about learning right now, to be quite honest. Once again, that link is bit.ly/Amazon Backlog Battle. So the reason why I kind of like wanted to bring, kind of like your history in wrestling, into this conversation is because I wanted to kind of get a proper context as what you grew up with and kind of like really impacted you like when you're creating your games. And I feel like another part that we should talk about is your proclivity to playing a lot of old games. And I'm really interested in like how I Want to Be the Guy got to where it is, having all those references, and how much of your past and growing up actually like impacted that. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, and I think the thing with I Want to Be the Guy is that like everybody assumes everything I referenced are like my favorite games. But the real thing is like no, it's like I grew up in that era, so I just knew what the zeitgeist was. I knew what, like, you know, like I'm not a super fan of Mega Man or Zelda, like, but there's more Mega Man and Zelda references than a lot of other stuff, just because it's like we all know that, like, especially when it's a comedy, and like it's comedy relying on you know, calling back to certain elements. So it's like it's hard to call back to certain games that like I really liked but nobody really knew. You know, I can do like musical references, like I love even though it's a really shitty game, I love EVO Search for Eden.
I see.
That was a crappy ass game, but like and everybody loves that game, will admit it's a crappy ass game,
right?
But like there's something about evolving your little dinosaur man that's just compelling. Like I could throw in a musical reference to that, but I couldn't make like a mechanics joke like I could do with Zelda, because it's like, you know, not enough people know what that game is.
Exactly.
So there's a certain thing where it's like you reference stuff because you like, and there's certain stuff it's like you reference it because it's just like you've shared an experience with other people.
Yeah, to be quite honest, like, you know, when you said that Mega Man wasn't really like something that, you know, you would call a favorite, like that actually really surprised me, given the fact that, you know, I Want to Be the Guy basically opens up with a Mega Man 2 reference. That's
right, because it's not my favorite, but it's iconic.
That's true.
Mega Man 2 is my favorite Mega Man, so
okay.
I can still have a favorite Mega Man.
Okay.
Even though I'm not like.
I mean, can you really consider yourself a hardcore fan, like, after them making 10 Mega Mans, though? I mean, that's kind of tough. I mean, just saying, you know?
Oh, it's impossible to keep up with, too. Like,
right. On an A-side and stuff, we actually had the author of the Mega Man 3 book from Boss Fight Books on the show, and we actually, I think, spent like 20 or 30 minutes talking about how whether or not we liked Mega Man 2 or 3 or 4 better. That was a weird conversation, considering, because we thought that since he wrote a book about Mega Man 3 that was his favorite, right? And he's just like, no, that's just out of circumstance, like, you know, that was the most interesting one to talk about, but, you know, 3 and 2 are my favorites. I'm like, that's not still really like, you know, saying definitively which one is your favorite, which is interesting.
Oh, 3 is too long, is like its biggest issue.
You think so?
Oh yeah, because after you beat all the Robot Master stuff, it's like, yeah, now you have to revisit and beat like all the old Robot Masters. Like, oh my god.
I thought that was kind of a neat.
It was neat, but it's like one of the things I think over time that appeals to me about older games is that like they're short.
I see.
Right, like, right. It's not like if you look at like the games I play in a year, I'd be like, oh my god, why are you so fixated on like all these old games? It's like they are so short.
Yeah,
it's like 5 of these games is like one AAA game. Like, and that's being generous. Like,
yeah. One of the things that we talked about earlier and stuff was like how, like, and before that conversation, I didn't even know it could be beaten that fast. Was your proclivity to like playing Bionic Commando like from time to time throughout the year, which is to me like crazy. That it actually takes you like what, 20 minutes? You said? Yeah,
like 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it could take up to a half hour maybe, but like depending on like if I get like stuck somewhere because I'm rusty. But like it's not a long game, right? It's like if you know how to play the game fast,
right?
It's like, and that's a game where it's like certain games lend themselves to being played fast better than others. Like we were also talking about like Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden, where it's like if you get through those games without dying, your time is going to be, in theory, close to speedrun time. Right. Like you're not actually close. Right? Because like that 30 seconds or a minute, the skill difference between those two things is massive.
Yes.
But like your actual number is going to look really close.
Exactly.
Because Ninja Gaiden, you have to play like a speedrunner to do it reliably. And Castlevania is a game where there's not a lot of ways to speed the game up.
Oh yeah, no.
Right? So so like like the fact that their time is higher than you is like crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, or like Contra is like a 10-minute game.
That blows my mind. You're mentioning things that are just not familiar with me somehow, because I'm still thinking about, like, 9 or 10-year-old me playing these games, like spending.
You're right, though. Yeah,
spending hours on these, and sometimes, by the way, like leaving the NES turned on all night, paused, so that way I can come back to it tomorrow after I get back to school.
Totally been there.
Yeah, to finish it. It's crazy. But like. It to me, like, what's fascinating about this is that, like you said earlier that you came back to Castlevania much later in life.
Mm-hmm. I thought Castlevania was super unfair and not fun. Wow. I think a lot of kids felt that way.
It's true. I mean, when you get stuck in a staircase when Medusas are flying around and you can't do shit for like just, for a long time, it's infuriating. I've been there.
And I will get to this more when I get to I Want to Be the Guy, but I think the whole masochore movement made Castlevania, like, it made people see what Castlevania was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think once you play, like, a masochore game, and I think it's important in masochore games that you don't lose a lot when you die, usually.
Right.
Because then instead of flailing, you learn to play, because, like, people in games are, like, way afraid to die, even when it's stupid.
Right.
Like, I always talk about this with, like, people who play Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll hear people say, like, oh, yeah, that enemy was, like, that area was really hard. I died, like, 4 times. And it's like, I died, like, 30 times.
Yeah.
But it was easy. Like,
yeah.
Right? Like, so for me, it's like, I died 30 times and it was easy. And you died 4 times and you said it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then you, like, realize, like, people have a very different fear of death. Like, I don't care if I die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whatever. Like, I spend my souls. I don't hold on to them. Like,
right.
I'm just going to die a whole bunch of times experimenting. Like, I don't care.
So, are you saying that, Dark Souls is probably one of the more modern games that you appreciate because of its difficulty?
Oh, yeah. Like, definitely one of my favorites. Because, like, what game it's almost boring to say at this point. But, like, yeah, Dark Souls is great. Like, everyone knows Dark Souls is great.
Yeah.
But, like, I think just, like, that is, like, a thing of, like, the overly defensive players who are afraid to take risks and are real, like, the thing they had to design a whole game to try and break people of the habit of when they made Bloodborne.
Yeah.
But, like, you take that back, it's like, that's how I feel like we all played games when we were younger with more flailing usually.
Yes.
So it's like, you don't have that iterative appreciation because the feeling is that, like, dying is, you're going to lose a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
But, like, when you play, like, Super Meat Boy or I Want to Be the Guy or whatever, and it's like, oh, actually, you don't have to worry about dying. And then once you realize that you can build up muscle memory to deal with, like, these complicated problems.
Yes.
Then you can take that to games that have, like, slightly more punishing fail states. Because Castlevania's fail state isn't that bad. You can't totally game over. You can lose your progress in the stage. The stages are, like, 3 minutes. So it's like, oh, that's annoying, whatever. But once you start applying that logic, it's like, oh, okay. Like,
it's not that bad.
Oh, this game's actually really easy. Like, it's not, like, super easy, but it's, I would say it's a good game for people to learn their first, like, hey, I want to beat a Nintendo game without dying. Like Castlevania. Like, everything in that game has an easy strategy that you can learn to deal with things.
I find it interesting the way that you're talking about Castlevania right now because, like, as kids when we were playing these games, obviously, like you said, like, we felt like it was so unfair, right?
Yeah.
Like, but now, like, and this is to me really fascinating because now we can kind of almost look at these games in a very academic fashion and realize, like, hey, you know what? They are doing something that was way ahead of their time, especially when teaching us, like, fail states, like you said, and all that stuff. And, actually, to your point about, like, Dark Souls, I have been struggling with the first part of Bloodborne for the past, 2 years, and a lot of, like, specifically up until the Cleric Beast. Like, I'm still trying to beat the Cleric Beast because I
haven't even gotten to play it yet.
Oh,
I just know about it because I don't have a PS4 yet.
Okay, all right.
Like I said, I'm not getting a next gen console until Brave Earth is out.
That's
been I've been sticking to that.
Well, you don't need more distractions.
that'll be the first game I play.
Yes.
The first game I'm playing after Bepstone is is Bloodborne. But like I know enough about Bloodborne to know that like the whole game is designed around the fact that like they're trying to encourage players to take a play style that is disincentivized in Dark Souls. Because like I think the thing like I said I know enough people who play the game. I've watched people play the game. It's like Bloodborne isn't that much more aggressive than Dark Souls. Like people say that it's like a little bit more aggressive, but it's like the capacity for passivity is just much less.
Yes,
like you can play almost as aggressive in Dark Souls.
I
that's
agree.
Generally that's how I like to play. Like I like to play very aggressively.
Yeah. As a person who has never played Dark Souls, like I've seen Dark Souls players be just as aggressive in Bloodborne as they did in Dark Souls.
Right.
Yeah.
But certain people, they like hide behind a shield forever.
Yes.
It's comforting.
Yeah.
It's comforting. I can't even blame them.
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes it's like people are so afraid of dying that like you have to like force them out of their comfort zone mechanically. Like no, we can give you no. It's like to make you be aggressive, we have to be super duper over the top with our mechanics.
Like overtly just like, no, you're going to die if you're not aggressive enough. It's interesting you mentioned that too, because like I have a typical play style where I just want to go in there guns blazing and stuff, and every time like I do that in a video game, my girlfriend screams at me because she's like, why don't you think about the situation first? And I'm like, it's okay, I'm just gonna die. And she's like, you're just gonna die? That's a big deal. I'm like, no, it's not. I can just continue. Like it's, I think that falls within the category of what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, totally. It's just people's natural reactions. Like I would always joke that, and I want to be the guy. Like if when you touched a spike, like a little fairy flew over and grabbed you and pulled you back to safety.
Yeah.
At the checkpoint, people will respond to dying a lot less.
Yeah.
But the game rubs it in.
Yeah. It seems to me like you fall into the kind of population that believes like, hey, you know what? A little bit of a punishing gameplay isn't that bad, Like, so I'm kind of curious, like, what you think about this one game that was released. I want to say, like, it was like the latest Prince of Persia game, which was just called Prince of Persia. You remember that one?
I haven't played any of the modern Prince of Persia games. Okay. Like, and I mean modern, like any of the 3D ones. So
I see.
I missed that on Sands of Time and stuff too, which seemed like a great game. But yeah, I know mechanically that's a game where it's like you just rewind, like you never have to die. I think that's fine too. Like I don't, even though I like hard games, I lean more towards liking hard games. It's like, I think that's totally valid too. And I think again, there's benefits to that, especially in a game where you're like jumping around. Because like if it's a game where you're like jumping around and parkouring everywhere,
right? If
you have a fail state that's kind of brutal, you're gonna encourage people to like jump on the platform. I'm gonna line up. Okay. How should I jump? Whatever. Right, and you're gonna make the game really slow because like falling is insta death, and then you have to do whatever. If you can just rewind the game, now you're encouraging the player to like actually try and run through the stage like a parkour person.
Right.
So like even though I like hard games, it's like I also like encouraging like fun behavior. And I think with the mechanics of those types of games, like having a punishing fail state actually incentivizes boring gameplay. So like, yeah, no, you should do that. Like it depends on the game.
Right. Exactly. I feel like there's room for both, right? Like, there really is. And I like I said, like I've struggled with Bloodborne, but I no means hate it. Like, yes, I've been struggling with the same area for 2 years, but that doesn't make me actually hate the game. I actually appreciate it more because it really is like, I feel that it's actually trying to genuinely teach me something every time I play it. And not in like a weird tutorial way, right? Where they're like, oh, you got to do this when the enemy swings this, but more like learning behaviors, using the moves at the right timing and stuff. And, like maybe someday I'll come back to like Dark Souls and actually apply that. But like until then, I'm going to ease off of that for now. And then I'd be frustrated.
My friend, she's been, she finally got to playing like Dark Souls games, and she started with Bloodborne.
Oh my.
And now she's also she hasn't finished Bloodborne yet. She's playing Bloodborne and Dark Souls at the same time.
Wow.
And she's just always like, Dark Souls is so fair. so fair compared to Bloodborne.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, the problem with Souls games though is so it's gonna be interesting when I play Bloodborne, because like the problem with Souls games is like once you learn how to play them,
Mm-hmm.
it's like hard to chase the dragon, because it really changes. Like once you get how to approach those games, they get much easier.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if I play Bloodborne, how hard I'm gonna think it is.
Hmm.
Because the general rule of like people getting into Souls games is the hardest game is the first one you play, and the easiest one's the last one you play.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, because you're so, like you said, you're so used to the gameplay mechanics and stuff that, you know, it's kind of like it's almost like slipping into comfortable shoes after being worn for a long time. And to me, that's great, and I'm actually super envious of you guys for feeling that way. I don't know, like I feel like for me, like it just, I don't know. I don't want to keep bringing myself into it, but can you tell I'm kind of bitter that I can't get into Bloodborne? Because, you know, like, it's a struggle, man. Like,
this is the whole argument of people having about, like, what's the word? Tourist modes and stuff in games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's hard because it's like, this is something like I've thought about too with games like I Want to Be the Guy in particular, where it's like, I wouldn't put something like a tourist mode and I Want to Be the Guy because it'd be too tempting.
Right.
But it's hard. Like, and I feel like Dark Souls has the same problem where it's like, you don't want to have an easy mode be too easy to go to, because then people would be like, people who are of the it's hard because the Venn diagram of people who will appreciate pushing through Souls games overlaps with the people who would cave to an easier mode too soon.
Right.
So it's like really hard, like, because I do think there's a benefit to having that, especially since you have like all these games with these beautiful worlds and stuff like that. But like, it's still hard to like mechanically figure out, like, how do you make sure players get the ideal experience? Because you don't want people who are totally left out, but you also don't want to go, because the other thing would be like, okay, if you make easy mode super extreme, then that works in a certain way, because then like people who are bad at action games can appreciate them, and the people who are interested in hard games might be struggling a little bit and might be tempted to cave. They won't cave that much. Yeah. But then there's people that might be like you who might benefit from the game being a little bit easier. But like, you don't want to play the baby mode.
Exactly.
And the baby mode, you lose out on, like, because like you said, you know, it's the game's trying to teach you things.
Right.
You lose out on that. So it's like it's really hard. When the purpose of your game is to push the boundaries of your player, optimizing your difficulty is really hard.
It is. And don't get me wrong, like, I actually don't want it to have an easier difficulty and stuff. But I think you bring up a more important subject matter of, you know, sometimes as a developer, you know, maybe a part of you wants people to see all or most of your content because, you know, but at the same time, like, how much of a compromise do you have to do with the level design and the actual gameplay design in order for that to actually happen? Yeah. And you know, and it's a weird compromise of like, well, experiencing content versus challenge. And I think that today's games, like today's day and age, like, I feel like there's a lot of the developers that are working on games right now are struggling with that very question, right? Like, yeah, a good example that I feel, you know, is more timely is Cuphead. You know, they have like a simple mode and a normal mode, which I never even imagined using simple mode, so I've never done that. But people were complaining that when they picked simple mode, they weren't able to actually check out most of the game's content. And I'm like, but that's not, you know, like, that's the prerogative of the developer. They want you to actually learn how to play the game with the kind of pace that they want to dictate. So, you know, just asking for an easier mode that unlocks everything doesn't feel as fulfilling than compared to like actually learning the gameplay itself, you know?
I have mixed feelings on that particular instance.
Oh, okay.
Because I do kind of I've always hated, especially as like because they'd have this in like other games as a kid. Like I think like Super Contra.
Yeah.
This not Super Contra. Contra 3. Super Contra's Contra 2.
Yeah. Super C. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Confusing. Yeah. where it's like if you play in the easiest mode, you can't like get through the whole game. That pissed me off so much as a kid. It's like,
Yeah.
why even have this mode? You just wasted my time. Yeah, but then again, doesn't Cuphead work like if you play on simple? It's not like the simple mode you can't beat the game, but you have to beat the bosses again on normal difficulty or something like that.
Yes, and the difficulty is set on a per boss basis. So you could kind of, if you want to try this boss on normal, you can try the other ones on simple as well. So it's not like, you're completely, locked out of your experience or you wasted it.
Yeah, okay, that's better than the
Contra 3.
Yeah, where it's just like, nope, sorry.
Yeah.
This is the end of the game for you.
Yeah,
but like, that's tricky. But like, okay, yeah, when it's like that, it's like, okay, they're trying something, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it's tricky.
It is.
And Cuphead's a little weird too, because it's like the thing that makes me uncomfortable with Cuphead is like, it's like, oh, just because you like how the game looks doesn't mean the game's for you.
Exactly.
Which is tricky because it's like because that's what because I think it's cool. Like I want more games to have like easier modes and stuff like that when it's appropriate. But like the Cuphead difficulty thing's weird because it's like if they didn't have that art style, nobody would care. It's like, oh, it's just Gunstar Heroes, like whatever.
Right.
But the fact that it also has a beautiful art style, it's like, oh yeah, well, if you make a really hard game, you can't make your game gorgeous or else it won't make.
That's true.
Right? Like it's like, okay, you're not here for the gameplay then.
Yeah.
A game where it's like then you can just look at it on like YouTube. But like I don't know, but people feel if enough people feel that way, which they do, it's like they're not wrong.
Right.
But it's like but it is tricky. It does make me have icky feelings as a dev where it's like I don't know, there's certain situations where like nobody's at fault, but it's just kind of like
it's a
awkward.
It becomes a weird design choice, I think. Because, like, if you think about it, like, the kind of art style that Cuphead has, it is very inviting because it is familiar, right? There's nothing oppressive about it just looking at it. Sure, some of the characters look mean or anything like that, but by no means do you feel like, oh, I don't want to come back to this game at all. But that's the kind of look and feel and motif that they chose. And so every time, somebody who knows nothing of the game's difficulty pops in, they're just like, wow, this game is super hard. But then, like us, you and I, like, are veterans of that era, we kind of see like where its influences come from.
Right. And like I expected it to be hard when I first saw it because it's like, oh, it's a boss rush game.
Yeah. And it's not just a boss rush game. It's a boss rush game that combines many of the you want to talk about zeitgeist, like the zeitgeist of that era, like the two frogs that you fight in the beginning of the game are basically Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter, and this one dragon boss like towards the end of the game is basically like the dragon that chases after you in Mega Man 2 and Wily stage,
yeah. And again, it's like it's totally a treasure game, so it's like right, like it's gonna be hard. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, but like Brave Earth has like pretty generous difficulties. Like I even do like the Mega Man 9 thing where it's like if you play the game with the easiest difficulty, like there's like pits filled in. Like
oh wow.
But the game has a story and stuff like that. I don't think it's like a super great story, so I don't know. Like I don't know why someone would want to play through it for the story, but if they do, it's like fine. And like I don't know, the difficulty kind of scales all right. So, but I wouldn't do that for I Want to Be Guy still. Like, it just... Well, I do have difficulties, but I wouldn't have, like, a super easy mode.
Right. It would compromise the point of the game, I think.
Right, because then it'd be like, well, I'm just going to play on this. I'm just going to go through the game. It's like, no. You're supposed to get mad.
Yeah, that was the point. There's a very famous kind of talk that Yoko Taro did, the guy who made the Nier series and stuff, like at GDC, where he said that he doesn't make games necessarily for the story, but for the feelings and the emotions that he wants to invoke in a player. And to me, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that I Want to Be the Guy's whole purpose is to just piss people off.
Yeah, like for real. So I don't like, also to make them laugh and stuff too, but like a lot of the humor comes from the frustration. Like I actually do say all the time, like I Want to Be the Guy's a funny game first. which is like I think the biggest difference between it and its and like the fan games.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the fan games are mostly challenge games. Well, I Want to Be the Guy. It's like the gameplay and difficulty is important, but like if I had to choose one, I would rather it be funny than
difficult.
Yeah.
It's apparent, like the absurdity of the events that happen in I Want to Be the Guy is absolutely something that's, I feel like, what a lot of people want to experience, and thankfully they can on YouTube. You know?
Oh my god, there's this thing. I got someone really mad at me on
Really?
Twitter the other day.
What?
I think they flat out lied to me too. So they're like, the game shuts down when I try and play it and opens up a Barbie website. This is for Gaiden.
Okay.
Which the joke here is actually, I feel bad now that it's the Barbie site. It used to be a game that was on the Barbie website. It was like this game where you put dogs on water slides, which was super cute.
Nice.
And I made that so like if you go to easy mode, it gives you an easier game.
Yeah.
Now I feel bad because now it basically says like, oh, well, you're a girl, and that's not the message I want to send.
Oh,
but,
that's weird.
Yeah, that sucks. I don't know what to, but I don't want to patch the game just for that. But if I do patch it, I'm like, the thing I would change it to, because I can't rely on anything to keep a game up forever.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's like I'll change it to a YouTube search for I Want to Be the Guy Gaiden Let's Play.
Yeah.
Like that's the easy mode.
Yeah,
you got it.
That's great.
You can enjoy it, whatever. Right, and they're not. That's never going to change. It's never going to have a weird context. Like YouTube would have to die.
Right.
Just like,
yeah. Oh,
right.
Man.
So like, if I ever patch the game, that's what I'll change that to. But yeah, the person's like, I wasn't playing on a medium mode. I'm like, well, there's no other way for that to pop up. So, and then he never responded.
Wow, I think I caught wind of that conversation on Twitter. That's actually really funny.
It's like I wasn't even trying to be mean. I'm like, oh, you were playing on easy mode, just playing medium, like medium's easy mode. Like,
yeah,
he's trying to say that I was like installing a virus on his computer. Like,
oh man,
it's like, dude, opening up your web browser isn't a write permission thing. Like,
right? It's just the thing that happens, man.
I opened you to a secure website, like,
right?
Like, and I could have done something. Like, I could have like, there's an API, I could like Game Jolt's API or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I could have had it like be an updatable link, but I didn't do that because I'm like, well, what if it ever gets hacked?
Yeah,
like I actually thought about that. I'm like, because then you could have it like you could have it direct to like malware or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
yeah, I think the Barbie website thing was, a really good novelty, but I think your idea of just linking it to a Google search is even better.
Yeah, I think that works out better.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, again, like the game is like, I just wanted to have a fun kids game. It just happened to be that the best one I found at the time was on the Barbie website. So it's like, so now it's also become a mean joke that I didn't mean, because I also like, I didn't do the bow in I Want to Be the Guy Gaiden, because it had like the same gendered implications.
I
so
see.
Like, that's not necessary. I actually want to have the bow as a findable item at all difficulties, because I know some people just like the bow.
Yeah.
I was going to do something else. I think I was going to do like, I never ended up at it. I was going to do like a baby Binky or something like that.
Nice.
Because it's okay to call people babies, because it's like, we're all babies at some point. Like,
yeah, we were.
That's fair.
Exactly.
Like, you can totally call someone a baby. Like,
yeah. All right. So, I mean, naturally, like, the popularity of I Want to Be the Guy is just really crazy. Like, especially for people who, I guess in a way, like, wanted to start off their YouTube and stuff. They'll just play the game. I'm kind of curious, though, because I've done a bit of research on the game, and I actually used to use Multimedia Fusion a long time ago. And I wanted to ask, like, how did you wind up using that for that game?
So just on a side note, I ended up buying Multimedia Fusion 2 recently because it was on like a Steam sale.
Oh, okay.
And I had a pirated version when I made it on with the guy, because of course pirate version, and I didn't have any money back then. But I figured like maybe one day I'll like patch the game a little bit.
Oh,
and like update it to run a little better. Like, just like do some quality of life changes. It's hard because like between the two versions, things break.
Yeah.
So I'd have to do like more extensive testing. But I have the version. I'm just looking at it. I'm like, there's no sub events. There's no sub events. Like, there's certain things I remember, like you can't name variables. Like, what?
Well, you couldn't name variables? Really?
No, especially not in the. I think you can now,
Okay.
but in the version I was working on, you couldn't name variables. It was just A through Z.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I remember that, but I didn't remember like there's no sub events. Like what the fuck? How did I make anything? So before that, like, so I've always been interested in like making game stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when I was like 5 or 6, like I would like make games out of like pieces of cardboard or with like blocks in a box and pretend it's like a platforming level.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always attracted to stuff like I remember Lode Runner was the first game I could think of that had a level editor on the NES.
Yes, that is an awesome game to have a level editor into.
Yeah, so I've played around in that level editor so much.
Mm-hmm.
But so the thing I got to is eventually was an old DOS game, ZZT.
Okay.
Which was it kind of looked like Dwarf Fortress. Like it was all ASCII stuff. Everything only moved like one character width at a time.
You were like a smiley face.
Right, you're like a smiley face. And this was an engine made by Tim Sweeney of Epic Mega Games.
Right.
Making video game engines all the way back then.
Right.
Funny, people will still occasionally bring it up in interviews and he just laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And it had like a feature, like a pretty decent programming language, and you could make pretty basic games in them. They're all top-down games.
Yeah.
They all involved shooting in 4 directions, and most of the enemy behavior was predefined. But you could do stuff. You could write dialogue. It was really popular with the interactive fiction community.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really limited again. For there, I found something similar called Megazooks,
Mm-hmm.
Which was a clone of ZZT, basically, that had, like, you could edit the characters, for example. Like, you didn't have to be a smiley. Yeah, you had to be 2 colors and fit within that tile space, but you could, like, draw new graphics.
Oh, really? So it's not just pure ASCII then?
Well, it is, but, like, you're defining a different ASCII tile set.
Okay.
Right? So, like if you didn't want to have text, you could add more characters by removing the font, for example.
Oh, wow.
Like, because you're using the ASCII tile space.
Yeah.
So, I mean, usually you wouldn't remove the font because you usually need it for something, but you could in theory. And that had a more robust programming language. You could make stuff like RPGs. You could make stuff like platform games. You have to program the engines from scratch, but like you could do it in the works, and they would be super crappy but like you could do it.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, a great training tool because it made me like, it got like, because I think the common new developer design philosophy now is you look at the tools you have and then you try and make a game that fits the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, to some extent, you should do this. Like, you shouldn't be a total stubborn idiot, but like, it's, people are so quick to like totally design their games around pre-existing solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to be opinionated about the game you make.
Yeah.
There should be stuff in your game where you're like, no, I want it to look this way.
Mm-hmm.
You should fight to have it be that way. Because if you don't have any opinions on anything, you're not really designing. You're just kind of, you're playing Legos.
Yeah.
Playing Legos can be a good way to learn, but eventually you have to stop playing Legos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the sooner you can do that comfortably, the better.
Yeah.
So,
it's interesting you mention that because like when more modern middleware like kind of came around like around the PS2 era, I started kind of pushing back at that just, irrationally, just because I felt like, the same way as you, like where sometimes people just get lazy when it comes to making their games, right? Like, and then games like Grand Theft Auto 3 came out of renderware, right? And renderware at the time was just built for like Burnout, which is a racing game. But, you see the things that come out of renderware and you're like, wow, these games are really freaking amazing. And they're outside of the genre that this engine was built for. And, it's truly fascinating.
Right. Because this, again, I use game editors, not even like programming languages. Like there's a time and place to choose your middleware,
right?
Your like engine, right? But it's like, but even within those confines, like these are people who are like pushing things beyond their middleware's limits. Or like you look at like Guilty Gear Xrd, for example.
Yeah.
Like people always joke that like every Unreal game looks the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have that game, right? Like,
yeah,
they're like, they use tons of pre-existing solutions, but they used them in a way that was, novel and had opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Had lots of So like, this isn't like to speak out against like using middleware or engines or whatever, because like I'm a baby, I need this stuff. But make sure the stuff you choose allows you the latitude to do things you want to do. Because even when I want to be the guy, I ran into stuff in Multimedia Fusion right away that was limitations, like not being able to make objects move fast enough to make the first screen with the slamming platforms work right. Or the fact that Multimedia Fusion 2's platforming engine is an atrocity.
Yeah.
It's a war crime. Like, there's almost no way to program it where you can't get stuck in walls. Like, it's the worst thing. So you have to roll your own. Even if you're rolling your own based on, like, somebody else's code. Even just knowing that you have the code there and that, like, hey, I can tweak this a little bit. Like,
yeah.
That's fine. Like, there's so much stuff in BEP where it's like, I stubbornly was fighting against the engine because it's like, I want it this way. Like,
one of the things that you said earlier was that, it's okay to use like a middleware engine, but try to push outside of the boundaries and really test its boundaries to see if there's a way that you can really eke out what you get from it. And I really
or maybe
that.
To be fair, maybe what you want is exactly what the middleware provides.
It's true,
right? That happens sometimes too, but it's very unlikely to me that like every piece of software you use is going to give you exactly what you want without any sort of like, right? Like there has to be something, and it could be little stuff too. It's just like, it could just even be the way like resolution's handled, like it, right? Like just like have conviction somewhere, like
exactly. It's kind of stay true to what you're designing.
Yeah. I fought so hard, and it's still not as good as I'd wanted it to be, but like there are limits to what I can do in Construct, but like the amount of like hacks I had to do to make sure the game could be resizable on the fly.
Wow.
Like something that would be trivial in like other engines, like if it was like in Unity or Unreal, and I could just like draw the game to a surface and then like have like that surface projected however way, like that would be so easy. But like everything's so messed up in Construct that like, oh well.
Is Construct what you're using for Brave Earth Prologue?
Yeah, so you're at Construct 1, which is terrible in different ways than Multimedia Fusion 2.
Oh, wow.
Mostly because the developers gave up on it because they were young at the time. And that's fine, because you make your mistakes. Construct 2 is apparently really good. But there's no upgrade path. So a lot of us got stuck on Construct 1. Notably, it's me and Konjak, the creator of Iconoclasts.
Yes.
That's a Construct Classic game. His is getting put through an interpreter, but that's big money. So the guy who made that's the same guy who made one for Multimedia Fusion 2, Chowdhury. You ever heard of that? Yeah. So this guy's whole job is making money off of other people's design mistakes early on. But he's real good at what he does. Like,
that's great,
because he also like does ports and like handles like intense optimization and stuff like that. So if BEP ever ends up on consoles or having a more featureful PC version, it's gonna be that guy's fault. Yeah. That's it's good to know too, because the guy didn't have an engine before Iconoclasts. So thanks to Iconoclasts, like, like, hey, actually he has an engine, it works really good. Just have to pay big money. Right. Well, not big money in the realms of game design, but big money in realms of indie game design.
Relative to game design budgets.
Yeah.
I think there was one tweet that you retweeted recently that said, like, indie game budgets can range from $0 all the way up until, like, some inordinate number.
No, all the way to infinity.
Yeah.
Like, cost as much as you want.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? Like, Destiny cost with marketing like $1 billion or something like that? Like, like, what?
It's insane. Like, the prices of game development, at AAA, houses these days. It's insane. And the recent news of, the Uncharted / Star Wars game that Amy Hennig was helming, and the fact that they're just going to rumored to be like spun off into something Destiny-like, I just kind of rolled my eyes when that happened, because man, that would have been actually good.
That makes me sad, because it's like my interest in like actual multiplayer, like play with your friends games, is basically zero. Like I am not a social gamer unless it's like competitive.
Oh, okay.
And even then, like, I prefer like one-on-one stuff to. I don't like team games. I'll play, especially now how like team games are getting now. Like back in the day, I could play like Team Fortress 2 before it got like bloated with horribleness.
Yeah, I could see that.
But like, you have like a server; it's an open server. Nobody really cares that much who wins or loses. You can come and go. You can play selfishly. It's fine. You know.
Yeah.
It's like almost like playing deathmatch with a team. Like,
yeah.
Right. Like. Right. My friends used to call it personal glory fortress. Like.
Right.
Like that's what it was.
How do you feel about like? I'm sorry. How do you feel about like Overwatch? Because it was like that was a game that was inspired by a lot of the developers' like time with Team Fortress and all those old like '90s games, '90s shooters and stuff. Like, do you feel like they're hitting a sweet spot there? Or
they probably are, but I don't want to play it because it's like it's pushing it more MOBA.
Okay.
Which is, if you look at the market, that's the right decision to make. But it's like, for me, it's like, okay, so you have this matchmaking. It's important to play out matches. I can't just leave whenever I want. The classes that are designed to be a little bit more interdependent. Don't want that. I don't want to have to rely on other people to have fun, and I don't want to have to worry about disappointing people too much. Because even in TF2, I would be sad because it's like I can't play the class I want to play right now because my team needs me to do this.
Yeah.
So for that to even be more extreme, it's like I am too selfish a video game player to be interested in this. But everything else looks great. Like
that's actually a very interesting point you brought up about like wanting to play the class that you want, because that's actually exactly what the biggest problem of Overwatch is at the moment. And they're actually going to try to address it in a new patch where they said like they're going to look at your play style and see the kinds of heroes you've been playing lately, and they'll matchmake you depending on that stat. So like, for example, if you're more susceptible to play a DPS, for example, like they'll assume you're going to be DPS in the next game, and so they'll pair you up with maybe a tank and a healer and all that situation.
For me, it's just like I just want public servers. Like,
I see.
Yeah, because like that's just something I love. Because then you play with like you generally get like a little bit of community thing going, super casual. And then even then, like in TF2, I would occasionally do pickup games and stuff.
Right.
But that's like more something I want to dip into. I don't want that to be like every time,
like super involving.
Yeah, like this is the thing. Like I hate like I never play ranked.
Me neither.
On anything. Well, no, that's a lie. Because I have played like some ranked Street Fighter and stuff. I generally do all right.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like when I like to play, it's like I like to sit down and I like to play somebody a whole bunch of times. I like to be able to experiment. I like to be able to learn and whatever. And playing like one game with somebody or two games with somebody and then that's it. It's like that's not satisfying to me.
Yeah. And it's true too. Like I feel like there's a different kind of responsibility that you have, when you're alone in a competitive game as opposed to like when you're part of a team. It's like in a way it's kind of like a little bit lighter, I suppose, lighter responsibility, but at the same time, all the responsibility is on you if you're playing a one-on-one fighting game, because guess what? No, they can blame nobody else but yourself, or maybe the crappy internet for that matter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Also hate life.
Kind of like spinning off that topic and stuff, like you want to talk about like how you got involved with fLoE and the FGC in general, like when you were working on I Want to Be the Guy, because that's not something that I'm quite familiar with.
Well, I've been an FGC guy forever.
Oh, okay.
Like not forever, but like,
do you go to tournaments and local events?
Not lately. I've been really real lazy.
Okay.
With BEP, but like people people here know who I am. I've been playing with like Long Island Joe for years.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Right? Like the biggest ass beating I ever received in a fighting game.
Wow.
Long Island Joe in Third Strike.
Oh, wow.
This is back years and years and years ago. Like this is like over 10 years ago. I think it was Guilty Gear Reload came out. He wanted to learn how to play Guilty Gear. So, and I was just starting to get into like the local Guilty Gear scene. I'm like, hey, yeah, you can come over. Like I met him at like a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't even meet him at a tournament. Like, this is just like, I'm going to go over, because this is what the people in the fighting game community used to do. It's like, I'm just going to go over your house.
Yeah.
I don't even know you yet. We're going to meet.
Yeah.
Guy shows up. We play Guilty Gear. It's like, and he's good. Like, Joe has always been good at fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, like, he beat like half the people there. And then, like, me or the other people, we'd beat him pretty soundly. But, you know, he was still good. And then it was like, okay, we've just been beating your ass now for like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Let's play some Street Fighter 3.
Okay.
It was a combo video.
Wow.
Like his Urian, just doing like all his unblockable setups and stuff like that. It's like, and I've played guys like Justin Wong and stuff like that. It's like not the same.
Yeah.
Especially a guy like Justin Wong, actually, because Justin Wong's a motherfucker.
Yeah, he is.
He'll make you think you're doing all right because he's patient.
He lulls you in a false sense of security, and then bam.
It might have been. I never played him in Street Fighter 4. I imagine that would be similar to Joe because Rufus is a rushdown character.
Yes.
But, playing him in Third Strike against Chun, he's just gonna take his time. But Yuri in Street Fighter 3, oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, we've always been buddies with him on and off.
So that's cool though. Like, I think it's interesting to me when people talk about like their relationship with the FGC, because, you know, from the outside, you know, the media kind of portrays the FGC as kind of like, you know, irresponsible, kind of like little kids and all that stuff in a way. Like I remember this whole hullabaloo with like Ares and like the weird Street Fighter Cross Tekken reality show they had, you know, and the dude right now is like really changed from that moment, you know, like, and knowing sometimes.
Is it
like,
true? I haven't followed him that closely.
Yeah, he has.
3D is out of my wheelhouse. So
okay,
and he's a Tekken dude, right?
Yeah, he is a Tekken dude.
Yeah,
but like, you know, like, but he's changed dramatically since that event, and he's actually been, you know, quite humble, and yeah, he still has crass jokes from time to time, but he's turned out to be like one of the best like announcers like in fighting games, you know, which is,
and I think there's a difference between being crass and being shitty.
Yeah,
and I think it's sometimes hard for people to find that line because it's like, that's my thing. It's like I try not to be shitty, but I can be crass, especially in the right places. Especially if you're in this FGC. It's like, yeah, right. Like if you're being crass in the FGC, like the bar for crassness is so high that there's a lot more latitude. So yeah, like that's good to hear. It's like it's like a nice thing too. It's like people can change.
Yeah. And you know, and I'm not immune to the fact that people can change. I think that that's kind of the weird thing when people focus on like one aspect of the community where, you know, they're like highlighting the negatives, and then, you know, what you don't see is the side of the FGC that was actually very helpful and very generous, right? Like I've seen, and, you know, I follow several FGC people on Twitter, and every time somebody needs help or somebody passes away in an unfortunate accident, like the entire FGC community, regardless of where they come from, they come pile in and try to help those people in the community. And to me, like, that's what people should really be paying attention to, because yeah, we might be crass, we might be douches and stuff. Like, hell, I was actually part of like a really early, you know, FGC community back in Family Fun Arcade in California when I lived there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like, we're talking like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 days and stuff. Like, that's how long ago, like, I come back to that. And, you know, and because I just lived like down the street from there. And, you know, yeah, those people are pretty crass. I was pretty crass too. Like, everybody was. But that's kind of part and parcel of, you know, the fighting game community in a way at the time.
That's fun here. Just a video game podcast with a Family Fun Arcade guy and a Chinatown Fair guy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's great. I have fond memories of the FGC, but so obviously you have a history with the FGC. How did fLoE happen upon your game? Like, do you actually know?
Because he was looking for games to play, and me and fLoE were familiar with each other. fLoE's most people don't know fLoE was originally a Guilty Gear guy.
I did not know that.
Yeah, fLoE was a Guilty Gear guy. Kicked his ass on Reload Online.
Nice.
It was probably just lag.
Probably, right?
Yeah, because fLoE's legit. But
yeah,
like, I'll rub that in his face sometimes. Used to be a dick.
Nice.
Oh no, he would make fun of me too, because during that period when he did it, like I wasn't playing a lot. And he like, oh, you like abandoned everything, you jerk. So he would blow me up for that.
That's crazy.
so we know who we knew who each other were.
Mhm.
You know, I was never like a super known player, but like people knew who I like. Enough people knew who I was within the actual Guilty Gear community.
Okay.
Especially the older guild. Like now, it's like who the fuck's this guy? I'm just and there's so many good players now that it's hard to.
Exactly. But I feel like, like I almost feel like I need another episode of the show to record with you just to talk about Guilty Gear, because this is something that is unknown to me too. Like, I mean,
Guilty Gear's great.
I you know what? It's funny to me because like I used to think that Guilty Gear was a game that I couldn't penetrate through in terms of like understanding. But then I look at like the newest Marvel vs. Capcom and I'm like, that is way faster than what I'm used to. Like my brain is like, oh, I don't know. Maybe it's just old age, right?
I stopped playing Guilty Gear. I'm always on and off, but like there's a period where I didn't play it for a long while. Like I think it was like when Street Fighter 4 came out. Me and my friends were mostly playing Street Fighter 4.
Yeah.
And then we played a little BlazBlue, which I really hated, and some Skullgirls, which
yeah.
But then we went back and played Guilty Gear. I'm like, these combos are so short.
Mm-hmm.
This game's so slow.
Yeah,
it's great. Like it totally the perspective totally changed.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's like it's weird going back to Guilty Gear after playing so many games, because now like it's a lot more digestible somehow.
Yeah.
Even though there's so much crazy stuff happening on screen, and I've always been tempted to go back to Xrd because, well, they added my homegirl Biken into it now. But
Biken was my first main.
Yeah, that's still my main since like Guilty Gear 1 for that matter. And I've just been I've been enjoying a lot of the gameplay of it, like especially at Evo, like when people like still play that game, and it's like, to me, I don't know, like I would love to be back in the FGC, because like I live in Portland and there is a kind of burgeoning FGC community here, and it's like it's crazy because like everybody is kind of like trying out every single game, so it's almost like back in 2000s where the FGC is kind of growing again in California, And
yeah,
and it's like I almost want to be on the ground floor, but I am getting old. Like my reflexes aren't as good as I was like 20 or so years ago.
I find that any reflexes I might have lost over time have been made up for by clarity. I actually wrote a whole article on this where it's like your biggest limitation for your reaction speed is not your reaction speed. It's how much processing you put into the situation.
I see.
Right? Like when you're thinking like, oh, a million things could happen right now. Well, I mean, the easiest way to think about this is like, think about like, you have a character standing next to you.
Sure.
And at any moment, they're going to do an overhead or sweep or whatever. Like block that. And it's like, okay, this is super hard.
Yeah.
Because like this can happen at any moment. But let's say they're doing a block string and you know that the mix-up is coming.
Right.
And it's the same mix-up, the same frame data. That's infinitely easier. Because you only have two things to look for. That's
true.
So the trick is to try and think about as little as possible when playing.
Jesus.
And not to like not think, but like you need to like be able to focus on like what is the tangible, important information right now? Like what are their real options? What's the one or two things I need to worry about from this position? And once you like, and if you get good at that, it's like now you are reacting faster because you have less like process lag. And when you get really good, your biological reflexes matter more.
Yeah.
When you're at like the top level of play.
Yeah.
Then it's just like, well, now we've cleared up as much craft as possible. Now these numbers actually matter. But
yeah, it's interesting how you framed everything that you just said just now, because I'm going back to our conversation with Bloodborne and Dark Souls and stuff, and these are the same kinds of conceptual ideas that you can even apply in that game, and
or the same things you can apply to an old game like Castlevania. It's just like, what is actually the threat? What actually matters? What are my actual options? And once you know them, and you're not in panic mode anymore. You have a very clear idea of what you have to do, and you can still screw up, you can still be wrong, you can still get confused, but it's much easier to respond to those situations once you have everything cleared out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that explanation. Maybe I'll give like Bloodborne a go after this podcast.
Yeah, like don't try and take in everything. Also, with any Souls game in general, like if you haven't played Dark Souls yet or anything like that, like
no.
Be as lame as possible. Like don't like sometimes I'll see some people. It's like, oh, I don't want. It's like, look, just lower one enemy out. It's like, no, that seems like lame. It's like, no, do it. That's what the game wants you to do.
It's a good strategy.
Right. Be lame.
Yeah.
Because there's certain games that don't that like they don't want you to be lame.
Mm-hmm.
Which in which case, who cares? Be lame anyway. But I feel like in Dark Souls case, like or like any Souls games, like they want you to be lame. Like that's part of learning the game.
Exactly. And yeah, it's fascinating. Like I'm getting like a pretty good picture of like the innards of your brain. I mean, that sounds really like brutal right now, but it's like it's great. And I guess like my further question is like you've had so much experience and obviously very deep thought about gameplay over the span of the past several years of making. But first, like I want to be the guy Gaiden, and of course now Brave Earth Prologue and stuff. Like what were the things that led you to Brave Earth Prologue? Because I think this is more of a traditional kind of hack and slash kind of game, right? Like
yes.
Yeah. So like how do you go from like I want to be the guy, which is like a super hard platformer, to something like like a hack and slash?
Yeah. Well, first off, like I want to be the guy is a weird thing because it's like I want to be the guy's example of the game. It's like I did not make the game I wanted to play.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I made a game that was interesting, was fun to make and fun to some people to play.
Mm-hmm.
It was not like the type of thing I ever had in mind. It just happened. Because again, I played Awada, The Life Ending Journey, and I'm like, hey, this is cool, but this isn't finished. This isn't whatever. Let me take a stab at this idea. Because that was just like some random flash game.
Yeah. Which
eventually became a full game that references I Want to Be the Guy, completing the weird reference Ouroboros.
Nice.
Right? The game that influenced me ends with an I Want to Be the Guy boss fight.
Yes.
That does not seem possible, but that is in fact true.
Yeah.
So it's so great that I inspired him to finish his game. Like
inspiration works in like mysterious ways, I feel.
Yeah. But originally I wanted to make a Metroidvania. Like I wanted to make like a Symphony of the Night or something like that. But I didn't want to do it in Construct.
Okay.
Because Construct had all sorts of issues, and like one of them was like bigger games ran worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like in ways that didn't make sense. Like adding like another screen. It's like that shouldn't even be in memory. Why is that slowing the game down?
Yeah.
Like, obviously the game gets slower and it was like disproportionately high. Like you could like maybe there would be a little overhead in other engines, but like it was kind of like a disturbingly low number of things to slow the game down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, hey, what can I do now to waste time? I know. Let me make a Castlevania game because I just got into Castlevania. I was a latecomer to Castlevania.
I see.
And I was like, this game's fucking amazing, and I can make a game in like a few months. Because you can just use one block for everything, have really dumb, simple bosses. You would be fine. Never counted on yourself as a game designer to not be ambitious.
Yes.
Because I started adding more stuff. I wanted to have like nicer looking backgrounds. Yeah. I didn't want to use the same block for everything like Castlevania did.
So how long ago was this?
Oh my god, it's like 6 years.
Wow. Almost as long as Cuphead.
Right. Then again, one person.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like while I'm working on this, like they fixed some of the bugs that like slowed the performance. I was like, oh, now I can add even more stuff.
Oh, great.
And then it's like, oh well, great. I made I Want to Be the Guy in an engine. I made a game, a really big game in an engine I shouldn't have made it in. Just biting me in the ass a little bit, but it'll be fine.
Yeah.
One good thing is, even though the performance of the game is kind of embarrassingly bad, I think people are used to like random NES looking indie games running really crappy for no good reason. So I think when people try and run the game on like an old ass laptop and they're surprised it doesn't work, I don't think they'll be that surprised because I think they're also kind of used to it now.
Just put it into marketing as, an authentic NES experience. Flicker and everything.
Oh. But yeah, but like that was more of a game like in the immediate too, not even a game that I've dreamed of making. Like something that like a very like in the moment real thing, because it's like I love like Castlevania and its enemy placement and everything like that.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things has always been level design. Like if I was to work for somebody else doing anything, I would want it to be level design.
Yeah. It's kind of apparent given that how like I Want to Be the Guy was built. Like you certainly had this really good eye for putting challenges in often unexpected areas,
Yeah. So even a weird thing is like when I look at like fan games, for example, I feel like the screens in I Want to Be the Guy look more natural than like fan game levels. Like you look at fan games, like it's a bunch of random floating platforms covered in spikes.
Right.
Well, in I Want to Be the Guy, a lot of places like this is a room. It has doors that you enter. There's like it feels more like you're going through a place, even though it's a cruel, dumb, arbitrary place. And there's stuff like you go up and you go up. You're in the sky. You go down into the ground. Here's a skyscraper. Like right, like it's not like super environmental greatness, but like even like in a game like that, like my gut instinct is to try and make things be like a physical space and not just an abstract collection of challenges.
Yeah.
So if you look at like any Brave Earth footage, I think my levels like not only do they play well, I think they look like I've had several people comment actually like when they play through the game, it's like this isn't a Metroidvania, but I feel like I'm traveling through a world. Like I don't feel like I'm just like being placed in these like levels. Like
right.
And actually a funny thing I did one time is I took all the levels, like I took screenshots of all the levels zoomed out, and I knitted them together. And they all vaguely connected. Like the distance of all the stages and how they would interact with the environment, like everything was right. And I didn't purposely go out of my way to do that.
Wow. So
it's like just like my natural instinct is just like I want things to feel like it's one sensible world.
Like kind of like there's some sort of cohesion between all of them. Yeah.
I would say like Brave Earth has very much like a it's not close to Metroidvania because you never backtrack really. But there's not like branching paths ever or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like the world thoughtfulness I think is there. So hopefully people appreciate that because like I said, I've had several people say that where it's just like I feel like I'm going through a journey. It's not just here's the graveyard stage. It's like no, I built up to here. Like
yeah, and that's kind of interesting. You mentioned how you consciously built the levels and I Want to Be the Guy and kind of make it feel like it's a certain place. And I feel like you're right. There are certain indie developers that, when they're creating a level, they're so focused on their gameplay part, on the level design, that they kind of forget that, well, you also kind of have to care about the kinds of things that you're telling the player, informing the player. Like, in a way, games are escapism in a way, in some form of that. But, some people like myself, for example, like I appreciate a little bit more work and effort contextualizing what I'm doing here and not just have to deal with the challenges. And it certainly shows in Brave Earth Prologue. And, I mentioned this before to you, but like, the first thing I thought of when I saw the footage was that I was playing a Valis game. It was such a really cool kind of flashback of memory. And I was like, yeah, you know what? This looks really freaking badass. Like, I want to play this game. But it's like, what's interesting is that since Valis is kind of like a 16-bit game, like, looking at it in a more of like an NES kind of form factor, like, it was weird because it was kind of like playing with expectations in my brain. Like, so how's this going to play now? It's an interesting like strangeness.
Yeah, probably it's a little bit slower than most of the Valis games, but faster than NES Castlevania, I would say.
Yeah.
Like you're way more because Valus is pretty fast. You have a pretty fast walk cycle. Your attack's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Brave Earth is like you're kind of slow, but you have some amount of like jump control, and you have lots of attack options compared to like Castlevania. So it's a lot more actiony. I think
That's good.
So hopefully it'll scratch that itch. But like Valus is definitely one of the games I went back and I like played a few of them just to like, okay, like I haven't played one of you in a long time and you're really close to what I'm doing right now, so I should check you out more.
Yeah.
Also 80s anime girls in armor, totally my aesthetic. Let's go.
Yeah. I did. It's funny you mentioned that. I didn't know that was your aesthetic until I went to your blog. And I looked at, like what you had on there, and it was like, yeah, this is totally his style. This is great.
Yeah, because like Brave Earth isn't that style necessarily, but I think like if you see that, it's like, oh, okay, I can see where you could go from here to here, right?
Yeah,
right. Like some elements are different, so like you have the big pauldrons and stuff like that, or like one element that was like interesting was like I'm glad that I have like the main character's brother in the game, because one of the things I have is I have like the like the no armor on the stomach, which is like such an anime look.
Yes,
where you have like the football armor basically. Because like the first response is like, oh, of course, so the girl doesn't have like armor on her stomach, but it's like, no, her brother doesn't either, because that's just the aesthetic. But like the type of armor, the type of armor is like a different style. It's just like it's kind of like in between styles, but like you get like the genetics are there, like, especially with the my friend who does a lot of like the cutscene arts and some of the character design. Like she's a huge fan of that style, so
I can certainly see like the influence like from the old school anime and stuff. It's great to just kind of see it in like such a different form, like it's like familiar but different, if
it's like it's of that spirit while not just being like, it's like I don't want to Cuphead it, especially since it's not old enough to be Cupheaded yet.
Sure.
But just having some of that spirit is cool, right? Like the thing I always thought about with Brave Earth is like I want it to be like the limitations of an NES game, but I don't necessarily want the aesthetic to be an NES game.
I see.
Right? I think about this with NES music too. Where it's like, when I first decided I was going to do this, I'm like, okay, I got to do a call out for musicians. And I got a lot of people who are very talented musicians, but like, it's like, I can't use you. You're trying to make music that fits the NES.
Right.
It's like, oh, I like techno. I like bleeps and boops. I'm going to do this. It's like, no, I want somebody. And I had to headhunt somebody. I found someone's YouTube channel. I'm like, hey, make music for me. And they said, yes.
Great.
It's like, I need somebody who it's like, is trying to make the best music they can under limitations, where they're like, it's like, I don't have a guitar, but I want this to sound like a guitar. Right? Like, because that's what they did back then.
Yeah.
Same with the aesthetic. It's like, I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm going to try and recreate the NES aesthetic. It's like, no, I'm going to try and do cool things and make it look as cool or as modern in some places as I want it to look. Because, it's like, especially since the aesthetic in a lot of cases, I feel like is like a late gen NES game.
Yeah.
And those are all about pushing, like, hey, like, how can game look? Like
in even in the realm of music, it's like, well, you have 5 channels, work with that.
Right. Like,
yeah.
We have more than that because it's a VRC6 game. So it's like,
of course.
Channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they started, it's like, hey, do we want to do sound muting? It's like, no.
Wow.
I considered it for a moment.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
That's crazy.
Actually.
Like, it kind of reminds me of a story that the guys who made The World Ends With You talked about, like the sound designer. Have you ever heard of anything from that game?
No, the game looks really cool.
Yeah.
I vaguely know about the game, but...
So what they did was that just kind of like how most... sound engineers back in the NES days kind of reverse engineered some of the data, some of the music. Like Square, actually not Square, but Rare comes to mind during the NES era. What they did was they used the sound channels that play for the sound effects. That's where they actually played the music, is where the sound effect channels were supposed to be. And then the actual music track was just playing like the actual sound effects, like the hits and the impact sounds and all that stuff. So that way they could actually push out like a lot more digitized sound, more so than what the DS could handle, which is so insane from a sound design perspective. That's
awesome.
It is so creative. And one of the common themes that I notice with our conversation today is actually pretty interesting. I find that you revel in the limitation and the creativity that comes out of it, right? And I find that really fascinating because I truly believe in that concept as well. I mean, I feel like some of the best video games that have actually been created reveled in their limitations, but then pushed beyond that.
Yeah,
is that an accurate assessment?
Right, because like when I wanted to make just like a few months Castlevania game, that would have been the opposite. That would have been just like, I'm just doing this thing. I'm doing a rote copy of something for fun and like educational value to waste time and whatever. And actually, that kind of makes me a little sad because like one problem I have right now that won't be fixed is people. It's like Brave Earth is very Castlevania, and if I think I knew how long the game was going to be, I would have changed certain things. Like, I probably wouldn't have had like Castlevania staircases and stuff like that.
Right.
I would have like changed a bunch of things, a lot of visual homages.
Right.
But then that happened. But that's fine. But like, because it's different in other ways. But like, you can approach a problem like that differently. And sometimes if like one thing turns into another thing, you could have elements where it's like, I'm not totally thrilled with that, but oh well.
The way that I would phrase it is, hey, that's why it's called a prologue, right?
Well, it was going to be a prologue for Metroidvania, so it's fine.
Yeah, there you go. That's how I read it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a funny thing. I was like, well, yeah, also the prologue took me forever. Yeah. And actually, after doing this, I'm like, okay, I wanted to do like a higher res game for the Metroidvania. Not going to happen. In fact, I'm going to try and reuse as much BEP stuff as possible. Just try and like, I'm not going to stick as closely to the NES. But I do want to keep certain things visually limited. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to have to do a whole bunch of like test things.
Yeah.
Because it would be fun too to even do stuff like particles and stuff like that.
Ooh.
Yeah, nothing crazy, but just like regular stuff like snow and stuff. Like something that like looked more like an old PC game or something, or like
like Commander Keen or something.
No, not that old.
Okay,
not that old. Like, oh god, no. I hate PC platformers of that era so much. They're so bad.
They are
torture.
Yeah.
I find in general like it's different now, but I feel like if you look through the history of like game development, at least in the 2D space, Western developers were horrible level designers. Just absolutely abysmal level designers. They were very tech focused.
Yes.
But were terrible at level design. And in Japan, you had like great level design. Not always, not universally.
Yeah. So would you say that you have your kinship is more towards like Japanese style games as opposed to Western?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
When I went to Bit Summit this year and people were playing the game, they were like, I had people there who that were like, sort of like, oh, this game isn't made by a Japanese guy. It also helped that apparently the translation for Brave Earth is killer. Like,
really?
Yeah. Igarashi's like was playing. He's like, this is a really good localization, and like my localization guy's like jumping up and down behind him and like excitement. Like he was so happy. Like he's like, oh my god, this is like really awesome and dramatic. And I like turned to like my translator guy. Well, I turned to somebody else because he doesn't speak English well.
Okay.
It's like, I guess he can, which is weird to me. I guess he can like read it and translate it, but like his actual like, but he's not very fluent.
I see. I get you.
I'm like, yo, tell him that when we're done, we're gonna retranslate his version back into English. Because clearly, it's better than whatever I'm doing.
Nice. So, how did that feel to you when Igarashi got a crack at your game and stuff?
Oh, awesome! Like, it was fun watching him play too, because it's like there's certain like things where it's like, okay, so there's an enemy in the first level of the game. Where it's like, and this is a screen where it's like I realized it was too hard watching people play it. Where it's like you have these two enemies, and when you get close to them, they're big they're huge knight guys with actually they're kind of tall, scrawny, lanky knight dudes dragging along these huge like Zweihanders.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get close to them, they rush at you, charge, and then do a big slow swing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like another one by a pit.
Yeah.
And everyone will get knocked into the pit. It's like, okay, I need to give more breathing room. This is too hard for the first stage.
Mm-hmm.
Igarashi gets there. Igarashi has never seen this enemy.
Yeah.
But I think, and it makes sense to me, like, you look at an enemy, this like tall dude walking back and forth, dragging the sword. It's like really slowly. It's like, he's going to charge at me. Like, you just know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Then when you see another game designer pick up on that, you're like, my design language is right. So he walks over. The stage has been murdering everybody. Walks over, baits his attack, nails him a few times. Guy goes to do the knight guy has a follow-up attack.
Mm-hmm.
The tail's good enough that he just jumps over it, kills him, walks down to the next one with the pit, jumps over, hits him twice, jumps back, jumps over, kills him. Just no hits the whole area.
Wow.
Never saw it, never nothing. And it's just like, yeah.
It's like, I mean, this is the guy who is known for the genre. You know? Just...
It made me happy too, because it's like, I know he's not the biggest fan of classic Castlevanias.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know like Rondo of Blood was his attempt at that, and even then, like, he moved past Rondo, like,
fairly quickly. It's like, let's make something else. Yeah,
so it's like, but he still has that in him. Like, all right, I got this.
Yeah,
that was cool.
That's great.
Yeah, sorry, like, everyone's like, oh, you must have been freaking out. I was like, no, it's pretty just like, yeah. Cool.
It's like, it's another day at the office.
No, it freaked me out. It didn't happen, but he was gonna play it on a stream at TGS. But like, things got mucked up.
Mm-hmm.
I was freaking out way more then because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like, not being there made it more freaky. But when I was right there in the moment, I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. I've been watching Walk Around all day.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's calm, you know? It's just Igarashi playing.
Right. Even though it was the second time him not being there, I was having like a panic attack.
Wow. I mean, that's so awesome though. Like, there's nothing more like rewarding than seeing like a guy who's like well known for, you know, for that style of game, try out your game to be like, yeah, this is pretty badass.
Yeah, I had the same feeling though with the Momodora guy, Ardeen. Like, I played that game. I'm like, oh, this is made by a Japanese dude.
Yeah,
and I go there and it's just like this like tiny Brazilian kid. I'm like, yeah, what's up?
Yeah, it's like, nope, not even. You're not even close.
Not even close.
Yeah, not in the right continent, I'm afraid. That's great. So, yeah.
But I know his games get the same reception where it's like, oh, this is in Japanese, what? Like, there's a style, and I think especially for people born on the NES, it's like they're like good Western games on the NES are practically non-existent.
Oh yeah, totally.
Super Nintendo it starts to change, but like PCs were all the good Western developers were, and that was not making console style game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Like Western level design didn't get good until 3D.
And just kind of like what you said, you know, like they were focusing so much on technology in the West that, you know, some of the parts of the, you know, I feel like even now sometimes some Western, you know, developers are struggling trying to adapt, like, you know, learning about proper level design and all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, it just wasn't in the culture for some reason, though. But when like 3D happened, I think it's Doom's fault.
Doom's
right?
Yeah.
No, but for the fact that like it ever recovered, because I think it's like it was one of the few games from the West where like the technology and the actual execution were in sync, where they're like, okay, we have this great engine and we're going to do our best to make this super fun level design.
Right.
And many different styles of level design too, where it's like Doom's an awesome game because it's like one of the few games you can play where it's like you can play through it.
Right.
And if you're familiar with like who made what levels, you can then later play through levels and be like, oh, this was made by whoever. This was made by who.
Yeah.
Like the difference between a John Romero level and a Sandy Peterson level is massive. Like, well, first off, a Sandy Peterson level is filled with boxes and tons of enemies and is way funner than it should be. While John Romero's levels have lots of diagonals and look beautiful and are still like all the level designs are really good.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Except for Tom Hall levels. Tom Hall levels kind of suck.
Oh, man. Cool. You're kind of reminding me, because I'm actually listening to the Masters of Doom audiobook, and they talked about, like, you know, Doom's level design, obviously, and how that evolved. Yeah. And have you read that book at all? Or
no, but I really, because I do love... I've been thinking about it for a while, but yeah, like Tom Hall stuff in that is like super interesting, because it's like... It is. Clearly he had a vision, but like... it like wasn't the time for it, and I relate to what he wanted so much, because like, you know, you look at his levels, it's like, oh yeah, here's the warehouse with all the crates and stuff like that. Because even like Romero's levels are abstract, right? Hangar, like what's the hangar, right? Like there's no hangar in the hangar.
Really wasn't.
But you know, but like the levels are designed very aesthetically pleasing,
right?
But like Tom Hall's levels try and look like the place they're supposed to be, and that's really cool to me.
Yeah.
Like Tom Hall should have worked on Duke Nukem. Right, because that's Duke Nukem's thing. Yeah, and Duke Nukem was ready to handle that. But like, you know, look at Tom Hall was making the wrong content for the wrong game, and when you play his levels, it's like, oh yeah, Tom Hall level that was fixed by Sandy Peterson. That's like, okay,
yeah. Once you read the book, there's actually a lot more context as to why he was doing.
Well, like right, because he had his because he wanted it to be more like. You know, he was like vaguely RPG-ish, like something a little bit closer to Ultima Underworld, I guess.
Yeah, like story-based, you know, like he had written like a whole manuscript that actually defined the universe of Doom, and I didn't even know he went that far, but that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because it's like, I think the thing that surprises a lot of people is that Ultima Underworld came out before Doom.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at Ultima Underworld and like how fucking huge it is for being one of the early 3D games. So it's like, it makes a lot of sense then for like to think of someone like Tom Hall looking at that. It's like, well, we can do that too. And then you have, then it's like, we're gonna keep this simple and arcadey.
Right.
And just like that conflict.
That's really sad.
But then you get Duke Nukem, which is like, you have like these very real spaces, and it's really interesting, like those two different types of level design.
Yeah, very contrasting.
Yes.
So, all right, well, I think that's all the time we have, unfortunately, for this. I mean, yeah, we spent like almost close to 4 hours, like we're recording, like everything. But I do want to give my appreciation to you, man, because thank you very much for hanging on. And
it's amazing. We've barely talked about I Want to Be the Guy in Brave Earth. Well, that's fine.
I feel like it's, you know, to me, like the most important thing is to try to, introduce the human behind the game, because that's not often talked about.
I think you're right, which is why I don't regret this all, because I think like we got everything around it.
Yeah.
Which is actually more interesting, really, because you could find me talking about my games like some like website or whatever, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Brave Earth is this type of game. Like, just read the Steam page or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. The Steam page talks about Brave Earth. Do we really want like another hour and 40 talking about Brave Earth again? No. Like, you know, and that's the thing. And that's what I appreciate about you too, is because you've given us such a wealth of information with just this conversation about like...
Because I would rather talk about weird things like that well, not weird, but you know, they talk about like, oh, let me shill my game for the nth time. I'm so bad at that. I'm so glad I have a publisher now, because it's like, hey, do you want to write your like description for your thing? Like, no,
why don't you do it?
No, because some devs want to do that. Like, you know, like they'll like, I'll do all the like, hey, can you make banners? Like, yeah, I will make banners for you. I'll make graphic stuff. That's fun for me. Any writing stuff that isn't for the game, no.
Exactly.
Right, because I'm so sick. But talking around it is way more interesting.
Exactly.
So thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
This has been a lot of fun too. And like I said, I learned a lot about, you know, the way that you think about games and stuff. I think this is very, like, I like thinking about games in both an academic and a fun manner. And I feel like we actually fulfilled that today, you know?
Yes.
But, you know, before we go, I know we didn't talk about I Want to Be the Guy, I didn't talk about Brave Earth Prologue.
That's fine.
But, you know, do you want to talk about it a little bit and kind of pimp it a little bit? Because, I mean, you are making a video game that's coming out in 2018. So
that is true. Yes.
Yeah.
Brave Earth is coming out. It looks like they say don't advertise your game by saying it's like something else. Screw that. It's basically like a Castlevania game.
Yeah.
You know, it's great. Konami's not making good Castlevania games anymore.
Yeah.
Do you want to play a pachinko game? No. Do you want to play Lords of Shadow? You shouldn't. Do you want to play a classic level-based Castlevania game that hasn't existed in like over a decade, and even when it did exist in those decades, wasn't that great?
Yeah.
Right? yeah, here's Brave Earth. I think if you like Castlevania games, it'll be great. One of the nicest thing anyone ever said about the game is Jeremy Parish played it in Japan. And I was listening to him on a podcast, and someone was saying like, "Oh yeah, and you played that game that's more than a little influenced by Castlevania." Jeremy Parish, who loves Castlevania, said, "I've played a lot of games that tried to be Castlevania. This is the only one that feels like Castlevania."
Wow.
So, if you like Castlevania, look forward to Brave Earth. Hopefully early 2018.
You're hyping me so much on this, Mike, because I'm like one of the biggest Castlevania fans out there.
Right? Like they say, like, hey, if they're not making the game anymore, yeah, it's Castlevania.
Yeah, it's like, the one you want.
It has its own twist. It's not 100% Castlevania, but it's the parts of Castlevania you probably want, unless you want to be a Belmont killing Dracula, in which case now.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask one last question before, we go through your social media stuff where people can find you. Will I get stuck on a staircase trying to attack things?
You can jump off of and onto staircase.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, staircases are handled like slopes. So once you start going up a staircase, like you don't walk in blocks.
Nice.
Yeah, I actually just did a huge revision to like getting onto and off of staircases. Okay, so here's my advice to like people who like Castlevania and want to make games. Don't have Castlevania staircases.
Yes, please don't.
Because first off, your game's going to super look like Castlevania unnecessarily. Second, even if you do them well, nobody's going to like them.
Yeah.
And they're also a pain in the ass to program because there's so many stupid things that like just figuring out like at what point pressing up brings you up the stairs and down the stairs in a way that doesn't like feel like you're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Pain in the ass. Castlevania stairs suck. They work all right in Brave Earth, but
great.
Just don't. Save yourself the effort. Don't do it.
I'm sold. Just by the stairs alone. But Mike, where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at Kayin Nasaki, because I'm a huge weeb and I've had that name for like... That was my backyard wrestling name.
Wow.
KAYINNASAKI at twitter.com. Or you can go to my website, which updates occasionally at kayin.moe.
.moe. Wow.
The best TLD.
It is the best. All right, Mike. Again, really appreciate having you on here and hope we get to talk to you again soon.
I hope so too. That was a lot of fun.
Definitely. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
All right, guys, before we ride into the sunset, I want to remind you guys about like our social media stuff, which is twitter.com/mybacklogbattle, facebook.com/mybacklogbattle, and instagram.com/mybacklogbattle. And we also want to remind you guys of our brand new Discord server for the Backlog Battle Army. To go there, just go to bit.ly/BBA. That's the initials of Backlog Battle Army. Discord. Once again, let me say that again. That is bit.ly/BBA Discord. We post a bunch of different cool stuff there, like talking about like what's going to be coming up next on the Backlog Battle podcast, to talking about video game deals. Like there's been a lot of people that have saved a ton of money on video game deals on there. And of course, general video game japery. So join us there, right? And of course, if you haven't done so yet, go check out the survey at mybacklogbbattle.tv. It's on the very top, like where the navigation is. It's called Survey. Click on it. Takes you to Google Forms. And, this is also your entry ticket to any future raffle that we're going to be having on the website until, of course, the next survey pops up, which, it's not going to be a lot of these surveys. Don't worry. And last but certainly not least, you can email us at podcast@mybacklogbbattle.tv. Tell us what you want from the show, because we will implement it. We're working right now to make the Backlog Battle podcast a newly improved show, really highly community-focused, and we want to hear from you, right? Also, send us DMs on Twitter and Facebook at our respective social medias, and we're going to be responding to you, hopefully on the show, or even the Discord channel, which we've actually plugged earlier. So, anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this interview with Michael Kayin O'Reilly. And I want to give this opportunity to thank him for showing up on the show and really being patient with all the technical issues we were having. But in any ways, guys, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week. Happy gaming.